It's the 120 podcast. Mikey from LA alongside Ben Hootie coming at you for our last episode of spring training following another season for us here on the pod. Season number 2 coming up. We've been talking about it for a long time. Finally, we're almost here. Games start this Thursday for your Chicago Cubs on Thursday night against the Texas Rangers we discussed this last night, Ben. Banner night, ring night. I don't exactly know how they're going to spread it out. It seems like every team does it a different way. I think it's Banners the first night, right?
Yeah. If I
Yeah.
remember correctly with the Cubs, that's
Yeah.
how it went.
Yeah.
It
And
should
that's how it
be.
usually is.
Got the boys on right now.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I love that shirt. Who else is on that? Like stand up or like kind of show it for a second. So it's
We
Lester and
got
Zobrist.
Lester Zobrist, KB, Rizzo's doing the punching, Chapman down there,
Chapman.
which is a little sus now. It's always
Who's
been
that under
sus.
Chapman? Arietta?
Jake Arrieta, he's hitting
Yeah.
too. And then the
Nice.
back, I wish I could show you the back. It's got all the tops cards on it. If you could see.
That's pretty cool.
A little
That's
bit of
pretty
an
good.
awkward position here, but it's okay.
That's okay. That's pretty good though. That's a good shirt. And speaking of which, we're gonna have some big time predictions today. This is gonna be less of a Cubs themed episode, more of exactly what we did last season, very similar. Looking at the league as a whole for this
Yeah.
season ahead. We're gonna go division by division, talk a little bit about some of the teams in the division, give a winner for each division, go by awards, look at wild cards, stuff like that. We want to talk, do some divisional picks. You'll see a graphic on our social media, but if you're listening along with us, feel free to predict along with us. Drop your opinions on Twitter, this, that, and the other thing. So, Ben, before we get into it, let's talk about this. The Cubs finalized their roster today. They're picking Quas and they're leaving Wesneski, among other decisions.
Yeah. And Luke Little as well. Yeah, I think for Wes, it's probably better to start off in the minors. This is a pitching staff that's very deep, and we talked about that last year. And to think where we're at a year later, considering that was Neski's in the minor leagues. Once one man goes down, he'll be right back up. So I don't think he's got anything too much to hang his head over. And that's just the great part about having as many options as you do, because, there's some great minor league pitchers as well that we have with Ben Brown and probably eventually Cade Horton. So the Wesneski thing is interesting, but I think a start in Iowa will be good for him. I think the real interesting one that I know people are probably upset about is the Canario decision with him starting the year in the minors. For position players, for rosters that were a little bit, whatever it might have been, they ended up deciding to go with Madrigal, Mastroboni, and Garrett Cooper, which has been a really nice success story this spring. And I think he'll fill the void for kind of split time with Michael Busch at first base in the early days of this season. And hopefully Garrett Cooper's not another Eric Hosmer and he's taking up time from Michael Busch. But I think they could have a pretty good system there, and because that DH spot's open as well. So I like the roster. Canario would have been nice to start up, but yeah. And Wisdom going to the IL, I think, made the decision a little bit easier on the
Right.
Cubs to not have to force their hand on maybe trading Wisdom or Nick Madrigal. But I know Nick Madrigal also has options left in Iowa still, so we might see him in the minor leagues at some point. Who really
As we did
knows?
last
But
year.
yeah, exactly. So I'm happy they got this roster finalized. The Canario thing's a little upsetting, but I think he'll be up pretty shortly. They just
Yeah.
want to give him some more at bats in the minor leagues because, frankly, he hasn't had that many at bats in the minor leagues. He came off that really bad injury a year ago, and I think he only took like 50 plate appearances in the minor leagues before he got called up by the Cubs towards the end. So, just get his feet wet again, and who knows? There's always injuries, and that's the great part of having as deep of a farm system and having positions already solidified in the majors. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with all that. But the Canario thing, I think, is the only thing that's like a little disappointing, but it's okay.
Well, Canario came up late last season and two-time World Series hero, I guess, but more one-time World Series hero and one-time Cubs manager David Ross just didn't unfortunately use him to most potential. I know that frustrated me and Ben towards the end of last season. Same goes for plenty of guys that the Cubs decided to call up towards the end of the year. That's one of the things we talk about with Craig Counsell. We've talked about it all season in hypothetical. Will he use his entire bench? Will he use his entire options? We'll have to wait and see. As of right now, too many cooks in the kitchen. I think it goes back to what you're talking about with pitchers, Ben, and a guy like Hayden Wesneski. Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen, too many guys in the bullpen, but it comes down to it that the line is hot and the doors are hot for if someone sucks or someone gets injured, next man up.
Yeah.
We talk a
And
little bit more about this Cubs team, though, before we get started with the divisions. Ben, one last note there.
no, yeah, and it's just nice considering the fact that some of these players that we will be seeing soon, I would hope, already got their feet wet a little bit in the major leagues last year when we're talking about Canario or Pete Crow Armstrong, and then obviously Lesneski's already had his cup of tea in the majors as well. So um it's a good problem to have. That's been like our whole like mantra this entire offseason. But yeah, it's I
Yeah.
think we'll obviously talk more about the Cubs when we get to the NL
Yeah.
Central.
We say it's a good problem to have so often. It's going to blow up in our face if the team blows up in our face. I was doing a game last night with Braden Fogerson, a good friend of ours. We do the Red Zone podcast at WZND. We were doing a basketball game last night in the WNIT, and in between, during a break, I was on my phone and I got a Cubs score alert, and it was David Peralta hitting Garrett Cooper. And I showed Braden my phone, and I'm just like, the Cubs are turning into the Cardinals. We're just picking up random veterans and giving
It's
them
not as
options.
it's not as bad as them though.
No.
The David Peralta, I don't even know. I don't know if David Peralta's because I know he's with the team right now. I don't think they have to make a decision on him yet, but
Mm-mm.
uh I wonder if he's going to try and find another place to play or he's just going to take the minor league option with the Cubs and just stay down there until the Cubs need him. Who really knows? It's uh I don't have a problem with it if he sticks around.
All the proper players that we expected to be in their situation are mostly healthy. The roster looks how we thought it would look with the welcome additions, and this Cubs team is primed for a nice run in the NL Central. We'll get to that last. Let's save that for last. Let's go to the American League first, the other side, the
Yeah.
intra league, the division and the leagues we don't really talk about unless Liam Lyons is on talking about the White Sox. I mean, it's just we don't really care. But we'll go to them first. Let's go out west. Ben, I think I want you to lead off with this one
For the
for the
AL
West.
West, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting division once again. We saw last year the who we'll be seeing on Thursday, the Texas Rangers will be once again very good, as will the Houston Astros. And as much as I am what some might say a Texas Rangers glazer, we've we've talked about many times on this podcast how they're my American League team. I like the Astros to win this division again. I don't know what it is about them. They're just I know they're having some pitching problems early in the season right now and a lot of guys are injured, but it just feels like every year they kind of like start off slow and then they just erupt at the end of the year. And I honestly expect more of the same once again. Not saying that Texas is going to be bad this year because they basically brought together the entire roster, and they're going to get welcome additions of Jacob DeGrom and not Jordan Montgomery, Jacob DeGrom and Max Scherzer halfway through the season. So, uh, Texas is primed to win this division again, but I just like what Houston brings every single year. They're returning that entire offense that just mashes the baseball. And the pitching staff is once again very good with Framber Valdez, Justin Verlander's back there, which is something that we didn't even say a year ago, but yeah, I'm a big fan. I think Houston's is primed to win this division, but Texas is still gonna give them a nice run for their money, and that's not even counting Seattle, who's also got a pretty good roster as well.
Astros managed this season by another new manager, Joe Estrada. I'm I think I'm gonna have to go with Texas. I think they finally got over the hump last year. They got ahead of the Astros with the infamous clip of Alex Bregman. I don't even remember what he says. It's just that cringe clip where he's in the locker room and they always post it. He says that like what is it? It's the Kanye quote where he says like
It's something
yeah,
like, "Who thought we weren't gonna win?" Or people said the Houston Astros weren't gonna win the division.
I
I
guess they'll
guess
never
we'll
know.
never know. Yeah.
And then Corey Seager, of course, kind of mocking it during their parade. I think that was figurative. They finally got over the hump. I think the Astros will be good enough to make the playoffs. We'll get to that at the end of our AL look. We move on to the Central, where we've talked a lot about these Central teams. A lot of people are counting this as bar none the worst division in baseball this season, as they were last season. I don't think there's very much evidence to go against that, Ben.
No. It's a bad division. It's a real bad division. And it's teams that also didn't do anything this offseason.
No.
I would say every team in this division took a step back, including the Minnesota Twins, who won a playoff series last year. So yeah, it's a tough division to look at, especially when you look at the White Sox and Royals, who are probably two of the worst teams in baseball. I would say the Royals have a little bit of a brighter future than the White Sox, not to knock them too much, but they just traded their ace. And then you just kind of got this mud pile of Cleveland, Minnesota, and Detroit. I'm going to switch it up here. I don't know where you're personally going with this. I know what Minnesota brings to the table, but losing Sonny Gray was a tough loss to the top of that rotation. I like the Detroit Tigers taking a big step up this year, and I'm going to have them winning the division. They have so much young talent that really shined at the end of the year, and we saw it in that last Tigers series towards the end of the year. They were playing the Cubs really tough, if you remember that correctly, and
Hmm.
just they have prospects coming up through the wing. Parker Meadows was really good at the end of the year, and Spencer Torkelson was one of the best power hitters in baseball in the second half of the season. And that's a pitching staff that got better as well. Tariq Skubal at the top finally, hopefully, can stay healthy, and as well as they managed to bring in Kenta Maeda, amongst other names. So it's a weird division, and I feel like if the Tigers can make a little bit of a run, like I just have a good feeling about them this year. I don't know what it is.
Yes, I like it. It's an underdog pick, and I feel like any team is primed to win this division except for the Royals and White Sox. Because it's hard to pick against the Twins, right? Because this is a
No,
team
yeah,
like they won a playoff series last year. I made like a 6 team bet back in like November when I was in Vegas for each division, and I actually had the Twins then. But I kind of like your dark horse pick for a really terrible division, and I'm gonna go with a similar thing, but for Cleveland.
okay,
I like Cleveland. The thing about Cleveland is I'm looking over their roster to jog my memory. They were ranked 12th last year among like most offensive stats in the AL, but they really have a solid lineup. Like if they keep this team together, which they did last year, like they didn't end up getting rid of Bieber or anything like that. This team could be really good with Steven Kwan, Jose Ramirez, and a number of great options. And then, of course, they have a great rotation. I alluded to Shane Bieber. They have Tanner Beebe, a ton of really good pitchers.
yeah,
They're a solid team. Are they going to go win the World Series? No. But I think they've been a little bit underwhelming in recent years based on how terrible their division is and how decent their roster is. They have a new manager this season. I think if there's any division that's prepped to have like a random team win a division, it's obviously the AL Central, and I like the Guardians in that sense.
yeah, and that's kind of why I went with the Tigers too, because Minnesota could absolutely shut us up because they were a
Right.
solid team last year. But as you said, I think you put it perfectly, as in, um, if there's any team that feels the most where a random division winner is going to come out of, it's got to be the Central. And I like what you're saying with Cleveland as well, because we've seen Josh Naylor the last couple of years, and he was really solid all year last year. But now
Yeah.
his brother Bo Naylor is going to be behind the plate basically 24/7 this year, and he was
Yeah.
a top prospect at one point. So, yeah, I think Cleveland's good, and I'm definitely not counting them out.
No.
This is like the one where you pick. It's like just throw mud at a wall and see what sticks.
I'd like to see Cleveland be good someday. I would. Like I
They're
like
young. They got a good farm system too. So I think
yeah.
if that could, and you mentioned Tanner Beebe, who was phenomenal last year
Yeah.
as a rookie and was a finalist for Rookie of the Year. So yeah, they're a good team, and I don't hate the pick it whatsoever.
Before we wrap this division, I obviously don't feel bad about the Cubs winning the World Series. Like that's one of the greatest moments of my sports fandom. But like the Guardians or the Indians as they were at the time, like have like almost as storied of a history as the Cubs in a very eerily similar trajectory. Like good fans, like a long time that a drought has lived on. They obviously had the name change, which kind of kills some of their culture, obviously for better or worse. But it's just a situation where I do feel bad. Like I hope the best for them going forward. The year after they lost in the World Series, they went like Moneyball A style and won like 20 games in a row, and then lost to the Yankees in the playoffs, blew another big lead. So it's been a rough go for them since then, and I hope the best for them someday, whether it's this year or in the next 10.
Well, that drought's getting a little too long. It's going to get near the Cubs at some point, right?
Yeah, maybe they'll meet back up again. By that time, the Cubs will have another 30 years. We move on to the AL East, where it's one of the most oversaturated divisions in the game, at least in recent years. This year, there's a little bit less talent as the Red Sox are poised to potentially, finally, maybe fall off, even though the Red Sox are always pesky. But we'll have to see what happens with this division. I feel like to make it all fair and game, they should kind of share some teams with the Central and the East for 1 year only. But we look at just the East now. I'll start. I think you're going to pick Baltimore. I have a feeling because I know you're high on Baltimore, as is the world, and they're really good. Don't get me wrong. But I love the simple addition of Juan Soto for basically a 1 year deal. And starting tomorrow, probably by the time this gets posted, Jordan Montgomery. I think the Yankees are
No, no
primed and
way.
prepped
No way on the
for
Monty thing,
for
but
Aaron Boone to save his job and win this division.
yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you.
Really?
I 100% agree with you. I think the Yankees, they have been so disappointing the last couple of years,
Correct.
but there's just one thing. Obviously, they have Aaron Judge. You can never count
Right.
that out.
No.
But when was the last time that a superstar was playing in a contract year and went absolutely nuclear? Oh, he was on the same team, Aaron Judge. I think
Yeah.
this you put it perfectly. The simple addition of Juan Soto just makes this lineup just absolutely insane. And they also are dealing with some pitching injuries as well, but they added to that rotation with Marcus Stroman, who we've obviously seen the last couple of years. And guys are getting healthy again. Garrett Cole, it's a tough blow, but I think he'll be okay. Nestor Cortez has been dealing with some injuries the last couple of years, and he's going to be their opening day starter. I think he'll be just fine. And I think a big X factor for this team as well is the pitcher that they signed for a lot of money just an offseason ago, and Carlos Rodon. I think he's going to figure it out this year as well for the Yankees, and that's going to be huge for them. And you just put it there perfectly. Soto, Rizzo, uh, Judge. I think Volpe's going to take a big step up this year.
Yeah.
Um, if Giancarlo Stanton can finally just be half the player he once was, I think the Yankees are primed to be just bashed this year. And
Mhm.
there's so many good teams in this division that they might win this division by 100 games, and the Orioles might be right at their heels with 99 wins, which I
Yeah.
think we could maybe pivot into talking about those other three
Boom.
teams that we mentioned
As we
besides
mentioned, the
the Red
wild card.
Sox. Yes,
As we mentioned, the wild card, because I think there's probably two out of three wild card teams probably will come from this division, and it may very well not feature Toronto.
it might not, but
Because it's been the problem for a couple years in a row. Because you look at the Orioles and you look at the Rays, and the Rays, I don't think they're primed to win the World Series, but I mean, this is a team that had the hottest start in baseball last season and is well on their way to doing it again. The Rays could be very good again, and I think they'll be an AL wildcard team. And you absolutely cannot count out one of the hottest young teams in baseball in Baltimore, who got a former Cy Young in Corbin Burns.
yeah, that entire team, just what they're made up of and how young they are, it's eerily similar to what the Cubs were a couple of years ago. And the craziest part about it is they still have players that are going to make their debuts this year and just
Mm-hmm.
make a huge impact for them as well. Well, whether we're talking about Jackson Holliday, who didn't make the opening day roster, but he'll be up soon enough, Heston Kjerstad, Jordan Westberg, and that's already on top of your two franchise players in Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson, and to go along with the veterans and Cedric Mullins and Anthony Santander. So that's a really good team. They're really deep. And if they win this division once again, they had the most, besides the Braves, they had the most wins in Major League Baseball last year.
Uh-huh.
So you can't count them out again this year. I'm a big fan of what the Orioles are bringing. And um, the Blue Jays and Rays are interesting as well, too. You can never count out Tampa Bay. We've done it too many times at this point, but as long as Kevin Cash is the manager of that team, they seem to just throw together a roster of players to be named later and manage to win the division year after year after year. The Blue Jays are interesting because they've been one of the most overrated teams in baseball over the last couple of years, but you can't deny what is on that roster, especially when you look at that pitching staff. So I think you
Yeah.
put it there perfectly with maybe a couple teams from the AL East should relegate over to the AL
Yeah.
Central because they would
For
win
one
that
year.
division handily.
The Blue Jays are interesting because you look at a team like you said, Ben, who's been, I would think, criminally overrated for years, but still obviously good and would be if they were in the AL Central, which they probably could be, even though Toronto's probably more out east. It makes some sense to have them. They're right on the border. They're like above New York, Ohio area geographically. You look at Toronto, right? They're a team that's great, but they had some interesting additions. They were attached to every major free agent. Robert Herjavec made the whole world believe that Shohei Ohtani was going to Canada. They were attached to every single major free agent. Cody Bellinger, the whole work. Who'd they end up bringing home? Justin Turner and
Justin
like maybe a
Turner,
two-way contract with the future Hall of Famer and Joey Votto, who can't hit over 200.
Votto, Kiner Falefa. It's mostly the same team they're bringing back, but they kind of replaced the production of Brandon Belt through Justin Turner, Joey Votto, and Kiner Falefa.
Yeah.
So their biggest problem is they just don't hit together. I don't know what it is. We saw it in the wild card last year. They did lose Matt Chapman, which could be crucial, but um, they just I don't know what their thing is. They just cannot hit in the clutch. And it feels like for so long, it feels very eerily to in the NBA. You remember when everyone was just so hyped about like the Minnesota Timberwolves and their future? And
Yeah.
obviously they've been able to pull it together by drafting Anthony Edwards and all the above. But like a couple years ago when they had that big three of Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Jimmy Butler, everyone was like, this team is primed to win 5 of the next 10 titles, and they didn't do anything together. It feels kind of the same way with Vladdy
Right.
Guerrero and Bo Bichette, who were both #1 prospects at one point. So,
Right.
um, I think it'd be good for baseball if they were good, but it's just I don't know what their deal is with just not being able to pull it together. And that lineup, it just they just have like boppers all over that lineup, but they just can't find a way to hit together. I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. I don't know what it is.
It might be one of those pictures someday where it's like the picture of like the early 2010s like Detroit Tigers pitching staff, or like the like Oklahoma City Thunder with Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. Like, damn, that was the roster, but like it just didn't click. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna see a lot of those guys, Bichette and Guerrero and others, just like go on to have incredible major league careers. Unless the Blue Jays figure it out in the next couple of years, I think you get pretty sick of playing in that division, and they're gonna go play elsewhere. All right, so for my wildcard teams in the AL, I kind of already alluded to Tampa and Baltimore, so that's what I'm saying. I think for the third, I could see Toronto, but I think a four-man AL East is not going to happen because they're just going to beat up on each other. I think
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go Houston.
Okay.
What about you?
I am gonna go with are we just naming one or multiple? Just one first?
I just said all my three in no particular order for the
Oh,
wild card.
okay. No particular order for me. Texas Rangers, obviously. I will always toot their horn. They're a
Right.
great team. Um, Baltimore. And it's tough. I was just ripping on the Blue Jays, but I think I'm going to go with Seattle.
Okay.
I like some of the additions they made, and they have a really young pitching staff that I think is going to take a huge step forward this year. So I know we were just talking about the AL East, and I think once again, that last wild card spot, I think Texas and Baltimore will get in handily. But I think that last wild card spot is going to be a three-team race between
Yeah.
Seattle,
Tampa.
Toronto, and Tampa. And
Yeah.
I think Seattle will be able to uh, get over the hump for
It
those
happened
three
last
teams.
year. It just happened to
Yes.
be the entire AL West. It was like the Rangers and Mariners and Astros all separated by a game with like, a half of a game left. It
And
was it was
Seattle
insane.
ended up missing out. They
Yeah.
didn't even make it in. So
And yep. The Central just keeps getting buried further and further down. Even if they have modestly decent teams, there's just no way they'll have any more than just their division winner. Hey, let's go to the division that counts. The division that never had the DH, the division of the best baseball on the earth. Except now we have the DH, which I still don't like. The National League.
yeah.
Let's go out west to the team that's already 1-1. I could be talking about the Padres or the Dodgers, but a team that's already 1-1 in the season, a team that everyone has said is going to be, maybe the best ever. They spent the best money ever. They blah, 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 blah. Yes, I'm saying the Dodgers, but is there reason to believe the Dodgers are getting too blown out of proportion?
No.
I don't think so either,
This
but
is
I'm
the
just curious.
I think this is the best roster ever assembled. This is a super team. And what they were able to do this offseason was just absolutely insane. It's current as we're recording this, actually, the Shohei Ohtani press conference is going on. So that'll be that's obviously leaning over their head at the moment.
Right.
The only thing that can maybe hold the season back. But I think even without Ohtani, if he ends up getting a suspension, which he won't, but if he does, I still think that this team is going to win the division by
Yeah. Oh, handedly.
at least 10 games. And that's not even ripping on because the team that was just the reigning National League champions is coming out of this division as well.
Yeah.
So there's, I think it's just the best roster ever assembled. I mean, we talk about Shohei Ohtani already, but on top of that, they managed to get Teoscar Hernandez, who is a amazing power hitter. They brought back Jason Hayward to anchor right field for them. They brought in Tyler Glasnow and Yoshinobu Yamamoto to, you know, be the two aces at the top of that rotation. It's not going well for Yamamoto right now, but I think he'll figure it out. And they're eventually going to get back Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw as well to fill out that rotation with the young pitcher and Bobby Miller. It's if they don't win this division, I think it's one of the most disappointing stories in baseball. There's no way that any of these teams can edge them out.
No, I think they're going to be the best team in baseball and the best team in their division, bar none. I think the Braves are going to give them a run for their money. But speaking of the Braves, you think there is that team last year, the Braves, that I remember specifically watching them in a rainy series in Wrigley last summer. And I'm watching this game, Cubs against the Braves, and like there's no break. It's suffocating. It's like every person in the nine you knew could ruin the entire game. Like
Yes.
it was just that it was just that suffocating. Watching the Braves and watching their lineup. That is the Dodgers now to a T. The Dodgers are always been that good. They've been that good for 6, 7 years, and now they added all the names you named off. I think the Dodgers, if they don't win 105 plus games, are considered a massive disappointment. But it doesn't matter. Doesn't mean a thing without the ring. And I think they're going to be incredibly good. And yeah, that's far and away the division winner out west. Let's
And
do the NL. Oh, you go first.
we didn't even mention guys like Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, who are just two of the best playing out hitters in
Yeah,
baseball.
I'll get there.
Um, it's it's one of the best teams ever assembled, and I'm honestly not even like upset about it either.
Yeah. No, me neither. I think people don't need to stop grouping the Dodgers together with the Yankees. I don't hate the Dodgers. I don't like by any means. Like they seem like a likable group of players. They're just a team that's spent money in a pretty, free of liberty way. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's nothing. There's no salary cap in baseball. So who are they not to exploit it? It's just how it works at this point. Can you hate it and say that it's not fair because my team can't do that? I mean, our team could, but sure,
Yeah,
whatever. But other teams have just not been as brave as they have, and they're going to do it. And will it blow up in their face someday? Yeah, there'll be Bobby Bonilla Day someday. But it'll be Shohei Ohtani Day. But they might have 5 rings on his finger and a Hall of Fame plaque to cry their tears into.
exactly. And that's all that matters. They are buying in for at least the next 5 years,
Yes.
and they are going to be so scary for the next 5 years.
I want to talk about the rest of this division, but I think I want to wait and do that a little bit more when we get to the wild card. Is that
Yeah,
fine with you?
I
Okay.
agree with you.
Okay. Let's move on out east then to the team that might be able to give the Dodgers a run for their money. Are the Braves, after being the best team in baseball last season and kind of ending underwhelmingly in the playoffs, prepped to do it all over again and give the Dodgers potentially another run for their money? I say they'll win that division. However, we'll have to see what happens when the playoffs come.
I don't think they're gonna. They brought the same roster back. I
Right.
don't. We talked about this last year. Every single player in that lineup had a career best season.
Correct.
That's just simply not going to happen again.
No.
But you cannot doubt what the Braves have built there and who they are. You just mentioned it. That lineup is suffocating. It's disgusting. 1 through 9, they're
I
just
hated it.
it's murderer's row, and it's going to stay that way. I think the Braves are going to be really good once again, get near 100 wins. Strider is going to take just once again, he's the odds-on favorite to win the Cy Young. He's going to strike out about 300 batters this year. Hopefully Max Fried stays healthy. It's a really good team, and what they've been able to do, what that front office has been able to do, making trades and being able to build out that team. It's cool to see. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but it doesn't really matter. They're a really good team.
I think we both lost all of our Braves respect in September.
Yeah, it's
But
I like the players on their team. I just hate the fans. Braves fans, I hate you guys.
oh man,
We're gonna go to war again on Twitter this year with Braves fans. I've already started the chirping a little bit.
oh man, this Cubs team really needs this win to make the playoffs. They're really serious about this. Oh, let's stop the game and lift up the base and pretend I'm the entire show. Reggie Jackson, just trying to think of Acuna just stopping the entire game. What was it in the ninth or extra innings? I forget.
It was in extra innings.
Yeah, it was actually. So it wasn't even lifting up the bag like that. Whatever he's trying to look like Reggie Jackson, whatever be original. Who care? I don't care. Like I think it's dumb, but I don't care. But it's the fact that the Braves stopped then with who was it on the mound? Was it Quas?
No, it was Palencia.
Yeah, it was Palencia on the mound, just kind of standing there, twiddling his thumbs while the Braves did a highlight reel package of Acuna's,
And then I'm pretty
baseball
sure
season.
the next pitch, Ozzy Albies hit the game-winning RBI single. Correct?
Probably. I just remember feeling so deflated at that whole game.
Yeah, that killed me.
Yeah, that was it. And then the Braves fans took to Twitter and really showed their true colors, and that worked out for them in the playoffs. So, yeah, the Braves will win that division, and that's not a good thing, but whatever. We move on to our favorite division, the NL Central. And I think it's fair to say we talk enough about the Cubs on this podcast. We'll talk about enough about the Cubs for the rest of the year. We've said the same things over and over again about how prepped and primed this Cubs team is, and they're going to be really good. But I think I'm going to throw a wrench into this. I'm going to call an audible, Ben. We didn't even talk about this when we planned the show. If the Cubs don't win this division, who will it be?
I'm gonna say St. Louis. I
Yeah,
think St. Lawrence, Jesus.
St. Lawrence.
I think St. Louis is due for a bounce back this year, and they're gonna give the Cubs, who I think most people think is the favorite to win this division, and most people are picking them. But I think St. Louis, if they were just so bad last year that it just does not feel like it could happen again, right?
hmm
Like, and I know Goldie and Arenado are getting up there in years, but there's just no way that that entire team repeats as bad of a season as they did. They added an ace to the top of their staff in Sonny Gray, who's dealing with injuries right now, but he's gonna eventually be back. And I know people are making fun of them for the Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson thing, but if you're going out and not willing to spend a pretty penny on a pitcher, maybe signing two veterans will work for you. But it just doesn't feel like they can be as bad as they were again last year. And I really do think that they'll be the team that we're keeping our eye on that could really, really give the Cubs a run for their money.
I agree. I'll say this about the Cardinals as I lost my train of thought about the Cubs, but I think of it a little bit. The Cardinals have still on paper one of the best offenses in the NL. Like if you just look at the names, I mean, just 2 years
Yeah.
ago, they had the top two players in votes for the NL MVP. They're returning all those guys. They didn't trade Goldschmidt last year when the whole world told them to. They could really have a bounce back year. I'll say this about the Cubs. The Cubs were still into the running to win this division last year with like a month left. There was still lots of talk that they could still somehow find a way to top the Brewers that last series of the year and win on the last day. And this is the same season, the only season in Cubs history where the team was below 500 by 10 games and above 500 by 10 games. So if you think about the Cubs this year, and they don't have to be flawless, they don't have to be 110 win Dodgers, but if you never get to the point where you're 10 games below 500, you look sitting pretty in September.
Yeah.
That was the biggest problem last year. When they got hot, they had to remain hot because they had to make up for the slow start. If you never have the slow start, you don't have to have that expectation of staying so hot and losing half the series in September, and then all of a sudden it's over.
They're bringing back the same team essentially that was one of the best teams by record in the second half of Major League
Yeah,
Baseball last year.
yeah.
And think about, and I know that me and you probably think about it every day, and all Cubs fans do, just the amount of games that they should have won.
Mm,
I think that problem, while there will be games blown, that's just every Major League Baseball team. I think that will be cleaned up a little bit considering who's the manager now. That's the most important part of it all, right? We
Correct.
could talk about Cody Bellinger and the impact that he's going to make coming back. We could talk about Hector Neris being on the back end of this bullpen, or Michael Bush potentially having a breakout season and finally living up to that top prospect status. But in all reality, I think what's the most important is the late game and even pregame mistakes that were made by the former manager, who I'll give him his flowers. He rallied the guys together at the end of the year. But I think Craig Counsell is just that much of a difference maker, as we've seen over the last 5 years in this National League Central with the Milwaukee Brewers, and what he's been able to do with those damn near piss poor rosters, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part of it all, to the Cubs winning the Central.
We'll talk so much more about the Cubs throughout this season, but I think this is a roster that is prepped and primed to do really well. It's my favorite saying today because it is. They are.
Yeah.
They like this is probably the most talented roster Craig Counsell's had.
Oh, 100%. Right?
Yeah, and he won the division with the worst Brewers team multiple times.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not just being a Cubs homer by saying worst Brewers team. Like there was some questionable Brewers teams with a couple decent players that Counsell took to the promised land. It seemed like
What do we
that's the
think?
biggest addition.
What do we think? Because I think we should do it now, because we don't know each other's picks. But what do we think about the three other teams that we haven't mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want
For
to?
the
Let's start with Cincinnati. What do you think about
mhm.
Cincinnati?
Well, as our good friend Dom Frederick on Twitter, who we'll hopefully have on soon, as we've been in discussion, calls them the Cincinnati Dickballers, his favorite saying. Um, I don't know. It's an interesting trend. Are they going to be good, like statistically, offensively? Sure, but I think people are too high on them again, as always. I don't really have much to say about the Reds. They don't really scare me, and until they do, I don't really need to talk about them.
I think the Reds they'll either meet myself and your expectations, or they will absolutely blow that projection out of the water.
Yeah.
You can't deny that they have some of the best young talent in baseball. And I think what they are going to hit so many home runs this year, just because of what that ballpark does for them. It's just a matter if that pitching and bullpen is able to hold it down. And that's kind of
Hmm.
what ended up being what kind of shot them in the foot towards the end of last year as well, when we saw them, go on this crazy high, this 10-game winning streak. They were
Right.
winning the National League Central, and it all just kind of came falling on their face. So
Yeah.
I do think the Reds take a step forward this year. I just don't see them near the level of what the Cubs and Cardinals can be just yet.
And where does that leave the Pirates? Because I think we can agree that the Pirates seem to be almost on a better trajectory at this point than the Brewers.
Yeah, I still think they're a last place team. I think the Brewers have a good enough roster to be better than the Pirates. But I think Pirates fans will enjoy this season. I think that's a good way to put it. I don't
Hmm.
think Pirates fans have too high of expectations, but I think you're going to see young talent like O'Neal Cruz and Henry Davis take really big steps forward that they've been waiting for. And that'll be huge for the future trajectory of this team, who has another one of the top farm systems in baseball and young talent already in the major leagues. So I still think they're a last place team, but I think that Pirates fans will enjoy this season because I think they'll be competitive in a lot of games. It's just not gonna gel this season.
For the love of God, get Quinn Priester some run support.
He's he's got to stop giving up some long balls
That's
himself.
fair enough. No, I'm a supporter through and through as we went to high school together. But if you haven't heard of this podcast before, but yeah, no, I think I don't know. Like you said, Ben, I think it could be fun. I think they could be, yeah, like you said, I think they'll be worse than the Reds, but they might have more fun because I think the Reds have a higher ceiling for some reason, and the Pirates are just like enough where like, damn, this team could be like, huh, they're a lot better than last year.
Yeah.
And then that
And
leaves
they
who?
they
The
played
Milwaukee Brewers.
they played the Pirates played the Cubs tough as well, but
Yeah.
Milwaukee, let's go to Milwaukee. Oh man, like it's kind of like the racing where you can never count them out, but I'm gonna lead a lot of that on, as I mentioned earlier, Craig Counsell.
Yes,
They
yes. You took it
they
out of my mouth.
they do have young talent, but I just think that losing Corbin Burns is going to be such a huge blow. And Brandon Woodruff is back with them, but they've already announced he will not pitch this year.
Hmm.
And they lost their star closer, Devin Williams, as
They have
well.
no pitching. They have
He's
no pitching.
it's going to be tough for them this year. They tried to make some moves to try and piece some things together, um like bringing over Reese Hoskins, but I don't think it's enough to even remotely come close to the success that they've had over the last 5 seasons.
I don't think Hoskins is a self-sustaining player. Like I think he's fine. I think he could be really good at I know it's hypocritical because I talked about how good he'd be with the Cubs. I think he would have been fine with the Cubs if they didn't sign Cody Bellinger because he would have been a good option in the middle of the lineup. I I don't think he's a good enough player to be the star in a team that has no pitching. I think the Brewers like floor could truly be the fifth spot in this division. Like I think if the Pirates somehow find a way to win some games, the Brewers could easily, not surprisingly, be the worst team in this division and really phone it in as they seem to be starting.
Yeah, that it just all circles back though to how much pitching that they've lost over the
Yeah,
last year, and they're going to have to lean so heavily on Freddie Peralta,
yeah,
who looked good last year, but
yeah,
he's still you don't know what you're getting out of him because he
yeah.
gets hurt so often, and he could also give up 6 or 7 runs here and there as well. So, um, yeah, I just don't think I Milwaukee is just. And Jackson Trio will be a nice pick, nice addition to that lineup, who is the number one prospect in base, or excuse me, the number two prospect in baseball. But I just don't think it's enough to repeat the success of the past.
So the Brewers and the Pirates rounding out the bottom of the NL Central, we so think. And now we move on to what is now our NL wild card, Ben. It's again going to be kind of tough. I think kind of like the AL Central. I don't think very many other teams aside from the division winner make a run for it out of the Central, but for the East and West, there are some other options for sure. I look specifically out west.
This NL wild card race is going to be log jammed, and that's why I think it's so important to put it in a Cubs perspective for them to win the division. Because
Yes.
if you miss out on a division, it is going to be tough to get a wild card spot. And I'm just going to rattle some teams off the top of my head that could make a wild card run, and I know that we'll make our picks here, but just to name a few: the Philadelphia Phillies. The New York Mets, I don't think you could count out. They're probably towards the bottom tier of teams that could potentially make the postseason, but I don't think you can necessarily count them out considering what they did 2 years ago. The Cardinals and the Reds we mentioned already, and three teams that we haven't mentioned is the Diamondbacks, the Padres, and the Rockies. So that entire wild card race, there's going to be some teams that disappoint, but that wild card race is log jammed. And I didn't even mention the Miami Marlins either, who are in a
Hmm.
wild card spot here ago as well. So, yeah, it's going to be tight. And I don't know if you want to start and give your
Let's
picks.
dive. I love that. I love that division you said. Let's go through that division together. Let's cut off the crust there. So yes, the Rockies are interesting enough and the Mets are interesting enough, but I think when the going gets tough, they don't have the talent for it. So we're gonna have to cut people where we can. I get what you're saying about adding those two, but I'm gonna cut those two out.
I'll say this: the Rockies might be the one of the worst teams in baseball. So if we're looking at teams across this entire uh this entire conference, the Rockies and the Nationals are absolutely no go,
Okay. I
and
thought you
the
had mentioned I thought
and
you
the
had mentioned
Pirates
the
as
Rockies as
well.
being sneaky. That's why
No,
that's why okay. You had added them to your teams there at the end, so I was confused. It's like, huh, does Ben think the Rockies are gonna be sneaky with Chris Bryant?
did I say the Rockies?
I think you
I
meant to
thought
say the Giants.
okay, I meant the Giants then.
Yeah. The Giants are a lot like more like the Mets. I think they could be sneaky,
Okay,
but I don't think they're enough to consider. Then you take the team that won the NL last year, but just got really hot when it mattered. I don't think they're as impressive as the Dodgers, obviously, but are they good enough to make a wild card spot again? It'll come down to the last day of the season, but I'm not going to go against the team that won the NL last year. So I think I'm going to add Arizona.
okay.
I would like to see, based on my shirt, I always wear the Padres t shirt. I would like to see a jump forward again for the Padres with the addition of a certain pitcher that I'm going to talk about in a minute and a new manager. So I think the Padres. And then I guess you can't go wrong with the Philadelphia Phillies, even though I think it's pretty obvious the Braves are going to win that division again. I don't think the Phillies have enough to go it over the hump over the Braves. I think the Phillies, who went all the way to the NLCS again, will undoubtedly have some fun this season as well and go and be a wildcard team.
Phillies are one of the funniest teams because the last 2 years it's like, oh yeah, Braves, enjoy your division. We'll just beat you in the playoffs.
Right. And that's been the case.
And I agree with you on that. I think the Phillies are once again primed to make a postseason spot and probably even a postseason run once again because that's just what they do. They just lock it
They've
in
been there.
October. They lock it in
They've been there.
October. They've been there already. Bryce Harper is a stud. We love Bryce Harper on this podcast. We couldn't give him his
I
flowers
love
enough.
Bryce Harper.
We're
I
big
wish
cut.
Bryce Harper was a Cub so bad.
We're Kyle Schwarber guys. We're Trey Turner guys. The Phillies are awesome.
We're Costco guys.
I think I think the, I think the Phillies are locked to make the postseason no matter what happens.
I agree. Who
So
else?
you can't deny who won the National League West who won the NL last year. I like Arizona. I like Arizona to do it once again. It could be on the last day of the season once again, but just the fact that they've been there already is so huge. Corbin Carroll in year 2 is probably going to explode. We already know what the top of that rotation looks like with Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen because we saw it for an entire October run. And on top of that, they added Eduardo Rodriguez, who has been nothing but consistent over the last 3 years. And they brought back that entire roster that made the World Series a year ago with additions to that lineup of Jock Peterson, which I think could be really crucial as a left-handed bat in that lineup.
Jock Peterson's always going to add some value to your team, whether it's actual value or trade value. Jock Peterson's always going to add some value. We could say it ourselves as Cubs fans. So who did you say? Does that mean you said all three, or do you have a third?
I have
still?
two. I have a third. Have you named your third yet?
Yeah, I said I'm so far 2 for 2 with you. I said Arizona, Phillies, and Padres.
Okay, I'm gonna fade you on your last one.
I knew you would.
I'm gonna go with the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
I think that they've had. We talk about the Dodgers, we talk about the Yankees and how good an offseason they've had, but really what the Giants were able to do with the late picks in free agency, managing to get Blake Snell and Matt Chapman on very team-friendly deals. Giants fans were asking for it. They've been waiting for them to go out and get big fish in free agency. And did they finally do it? Not necessarily, but I think they did enough to make fans very pleased with this offseason. So I think those two additions is just awesome on top of a lineup that was in the thick of things really until the Cubs swept them in late September.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not even mentioning, they also added Jung-Ho Lee and Jorge Soler this offseason as well. So that's a pitching staff that, once again, I mean, Blake Snell and Logan Webb at the top of your pitching staff is just awesome with some young guys coming up through that pitching staff as well. And Marco Luciano is going to be at shortstop, finally not blocked by Brandon Crawford anymore. Patrick Bailey was one of the best stories of a young player as a catcher last year. So I think the Giants are a really solid squad that is going to look pretty good this year.
I love it. I love when teams like the Giants find a way to still be competitive, kind of like the Red Sox last year. But let's talk about the NL awards, or just all the awards in general. And I'll kind of give you the backup as to why I felt like I had to pick the Padres, because I'm giving the Padres 2 of these 3 awards. I am wearing my Padres shirt this podcast figuratively. I'm not. I'm wearing my Yin Yang QZ, but no, should have been wearing my Padres t-shirt. I like Mike Schilt to win the Manager of the Year in his first year as the Padres manager, and I like the former White Sox to give people a headache and win the Cy Young this year as Dylan Cease.
How about that?
Kind of a dark horse pick. I didn't see anybody else really saying it, but I love it. He's looked good in the spring. I know it doesn't mean too much, but I love it. He's on a winning team now. They went out and got him. He's got, I believe, 2 years left in his deal. I believe he's a UFA in 25. I looked that up earlier. So it's not a contract year for him, which, like, for better or worse, I like that pick. And I want to hear your 2 for that. Then we'll do MVP last.
So I'm on a similar boat with you with it seems like whoever gets that last wild card spot, if it goes based on our rankings, is going to win Manager of the Year. Because I have
Hmm.
new Giants manager and former Padres manager Bob Melvin. I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants win a lot of games this year, where they
Yeah.
might be one of the top wild card teams. They're just not better than the Dodgers.
No.
So, yeah, I like Bob Melvin. I think he got a raw deal in San Diego with what kind of happened and escalated out there. So I think he'll be able to hone this San Francisco in and win a lot of games, and that'll be huge, getting them to the playoffs. For my Cy Young, he's one of the favorites. He just got a big contract extension. Um, I like Zach Wheeler to win it. Cy Young, I can never pick right. I don't know why. It's just
It's so random. Who knows?
it always is like on and off with pitchers, but I like Zach Wheeler to do it. He's going to strike out a million batters this year and probably look really good for that Philly staff. But once again, I wouldn't be shocked if Dylan Cease wins it, if Spencer Strider wins it, or, which I think we're getting to next, if our ace, Justin Steele, were to win it.
Hmm. I think that's what I was gonna say. We said to write down the Cubs player that you think is must or best prime to win it. I wrote Steele, obviously. I think Steele is still criminally underrated. They came out with the top 10 pitchers last season, whatever, wasn't even on the list. How do you even consider him a top three finalist for the NL and not even put him on the list? I get that he had a bad outing or two towards the end, and he really needed to show up big to win it because you already kind of have to be in the club. But now he's been in that consideration. He's not a nobody, and I think if he comes out to a hot start, hopefully he's healthy and okay. It seems like he is after last week's injury. I see no reason why he can't give it a run for its money again.
Yeah, you put it perfectly right there. Criminally underrated to this point, and
Yeah.
I think this year could be huge just to get him that national recognition if he kind of puts together a similar, even better season to what he had a year ago.
For Before we go to the MVP, I want to add one quick note here about the manager of the year. What do you think about? It's weird to call this a dark horse pick because like the team is by any means not a under the radar team, but Dave Roberts has only won manager of the year once in 2016.
Yeah,
Do you think you give a veteran manager a rookie or a manager of the year when he has such a murderer's row lineup? The answer on paper is no, but it's like that's a lot of personality in that team. If you can phone it in and that team wins 110 games, I don't see why he shouldn't be considered again.
that's if the Dodgers like go on and break records with the amount of wins that they could potentially have, then I think Roberts would probably be a shoe-in. But over the last couple of years, we've seen this trend of manager of the year either be the team that's most improved or a team that kind of has a weird, because we've seen Kevin Cash and Craig Counsell win it a lot, and they have
Hmm.
obviously had past success. But I think it's more just based on what they've been able to do with the rosters at hand. So
Right.
I think for Roberts to win it, he'd have to win like 115 plus games. But I
Right.
just think that there's so many teams in the NL that can improve this year, where we're mentioning a Mike Schilt or Bob Melvin, or I don't even want to say it, but Ali Marmol for the Cardinals potentially, whatever it might be, that they are able to take such huge leaps forward that it's almost more impressive that they were able to do that than Dave Roberts winning it with, as you said, a murderer's row lineup.
All right, let's do MVP for the NL real quick.
Okay.
I want to go with my guy. I think it's pretty apparent that it's a good pick to pick a Dodger to win the MVP this year because there's just going to be such a limitless possibility for RBIs. And I would love to see my guy Freddie Freeman win number two.
Okay.
He's
I'm
he isn't he's already batting under 200 after the two Tokyo games. Let it be known, but he could turn it around.
I'm gonna go with the guy that's off to a hot start through the Tokyo games. That's Mookie Betts. I think a
Hmm.
Dodgers gonna win it this year.
Me too.
Might not be Shohei because you take out the pitching and it more is relying on power, but Mookie is just he's awesome. So is Freddie. They they
I love them both.
they're awesome. And Mookie is we don't talk about Mookie Betts enough, where we hold Mike Trout to the standard, respectfully so. He's the greatest player of our generation. But Mookie is right there with him, and he has the rings to back it up as well. So
Yeah,
it's
well, he's making a complete switch this season too. We talked about this you and I off air recently about how Mookie Betts kind of boosts his award stock based on the fact that he could be great this year in the middle infield and be like, holy cow, this guy's won an MVP before, he's won World Series before, and he's doing it all over again. He looks like Derek Jeter.
yeah, yeah. Who knows? He's just awesome, and what he's doing for the game right now too with his podcast and everything
Yeah.
like that. Um, yeah, the NL one was tough for me to pick, because I don't really have like someone like ingrained in my head like I usually do for these two awards, but I think it's a safe bet to say like Mookie or Freddie could win
Yeah.
it, and you can't count out the Acuñas of the world
No.
and Shohei obviously as well. So it's going to be a tight race, I think, all around.
I was gonna say for my like if a Cub wins it pick, I think it's pretty obvious who we both think. I don't know, you might be different, but I was just gonna say Cody.
No, I'm going to switch up on you.
What are you gonna say?
I'm saying Seiya.
Ooh. They
I,
repeat what you said to me last night about the when the mics are on about how the MLB feels about Seiya and how they planned out 2025.
I think I think MLB thinks Seiya is going to explode this year. We've already seen it through spring training. If you haven't seen, uh, the Cubs and Dodgers are opening up the season in Tokyo. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo. Between Cubs and Dodgers to put the two Japanese faces of baseball, or maybe three if we're counting Yamamoto,
Maybe
uh,
four.
four including Shota,
Yeah.
um, up against each other. I think Seiya is going to absolutely explode this year. I think he's plus 4,500 to win MVP, on a certain sports book. I'm not going to say it because sponsor us, but no, I'm kidding. But yeah, I'm going to place a ticket for him to win just because I want to root for him and I root so hard for his success. And what he did in the second half of last year, what he's doing through spring training, I think he's going to explode this year and be a key role to the Cubs eventually winning the NL Central.
Mid-level team got 97 RBIs last year and missed a month. Cody Bellinger is my pick. If he can really connect like he did last year, now he has his big contract. He knows that he's secure for 3 years if he wants to, but he knows if he overperforms, he could have that mutual breakup and just go get a huge deal somewhere else if he wants. Cody Bellinger, the sky's the limit for him this year. He's completely flipped his own script on the former MVP that kind of fell off the face of the earth. And what better way to really stake his Cooperstown stake than go win another one with a totally different team? I would love to see that happen, and I think it totally can happen. All right,
That'd be
let's wrap up
awesome.
with the AL awards. It's funny because I almost wish we did this right after the AL. That was bad timing on my part, but a lot of mine also have to do with who I picked for my
Okay.
teams. I was gonna say for the Cy, I like Corbin Burns. I like
Nice.
again kind of the same thing I said on the other side. New team in a really good situation, go win it again, Corbin. And then for manager of the year, I like Stephen Voigt to win it for the Guardians because I think that team could be really good and go win a division this year. And kind of like you said, Ben, if a team wins a division that's not exactly expected to, wins enough ball games, they're basically a shoe in for manager of the year.
So when I look at Cy Young, I like Kevin Gossman. Kind of similar to the Wheeler pick. I think he's just gonna strike out so many players this year. I think the Garrett Cole injury is huge for his
Mm-hmm.
stock. Gossman is currently the favorite right now to win it. Just a really underrated pitcher that's just been so good over the last 5 years. For my manager of the year, a team that we talked about earlier that I just think is going to take huge steps forward and save his job. I have Aaron Boone winning AL
I
Manager of
like
the
that
Year.
pick.
I
I
have
thought
Aaron
about
Boone
that
winning
too.
AL Manager of the Year. But I don't hate if the Tigers were to win it, the Tigers manager to win it. So, or excuse me, it's what's his face? It's AJ from
Hinch.
the yeah, AJ Hinch.
By the way, I was looking at my phone because Otani addresses gambling saga. Shohei Otani says he never bet on sports, and former Dodgers interpreter Ippei Mizuhara was, quote, stealing money from me. So Shohei
This
doubled down.
this is getting weird.
No pun intended. I didn't
This
even
is
think about that
getting
when I said it.
weird.
Shohei has doubled down on his original quote that he is innocent of any thoughts, and barring the fact that I don't think the MLB is going to go into a full fledged investigation on their Showtime player, I think he's pretty scot free.
I feel bad for Ipe. I think he's getting too much of the blow right now, but that's another conversation for another time.
Let's round out with our AL MVP picks. Again, we said it. I think you kind of said it when you picked it when I picked the Yankees. For a player that could literally do a one and done year and prove it in the contract year and maybe eventually, go get that big contract that he turned down with the Nationals, I'm saying Juan Soto.
Yeah, I have a sleeper pick that I have a ticket on right now, and I know that I've been talking to you about him throughout the offseason. But when I was saying my Yankees statement, I kind of talked myself into Juan Soto. So I'll say the safe pick is Juan Soto,
Mhm.
just because of that contract year and what Juan Soto is. I mean, he is a generational talent, and
Yeah.
something how frequent he gets on base is just absurd, and hitting into that Yankee short porch and right field all year long. It's going to be murderer's row with him and Judge.
Oh my
But
God.
my sleeper pick, if I could get into that, and I've been high on this guy all off season long. I love what Gunnar Henderson can bring to the table for the Baltimore Orioles.
Mhm.
And I think that because Gunnar was losing the rookie of the year race right about up until the All-Star break. Josh Young got the bid over Gunnar at third base. And then Gunnar just went to the second half, absolutely guns blazing. One of the best players in Major League Baseball across the second half of the season. I think he's going to continue that. He's a former number one prospect in baseball. Maybe take that Chris Bryant-esque jump in his second year. I think Gunner's going to hit the ground running. Soto's the safe pick, but I love what Gunnar Henderson brings to the table for that Orioles roster.
And I think Gunnar Henderson's a pretty popular pick around it too. Not to say he's not a dark horse, but I think a lot of people are rooting for him to take care of that business for sure as well. Ben, will wrap, but another good preview of this season. I am personally psyched that the Cubs are back
World
starting
Series
this.
picks.
Oh, we have to do a, well, for me, I thought about saying it, but for me, I thought about it and it's like I want to say the Cubs, so we can might as well just rule that out that I want to say the Cubs and they very well could happen. But if not, I mean, if this Dodgers team doesn't win the World Series, I don't know what to tell you. It's just baseball.
I think Major League Baseball is going to finally get what they want this year. I think we've been hyping it up for so long at this point that I think this is finally the year we get Yankees,
Mm,
Dodgers in the World Series.
mm.
Dodgers will win it. It'll be a disappointment if they don't, but I think this is the year that they finally get what they've been asking for.
They would love that. You saw the ratings adjustments from last year and stuff like that with years where there's a premier team, like the downward trend, the literal mountain from the Cubs and Indians to um, Rangers and Diamondbacks last year at that really low mark. Yankees and Dodgers would be so high that my hand is not even in the chart above my screen right now. I
Literally,
mean, it would bring baseball back. It would be the home run race. It would be insane.
it would be absolutely wonderful for baseball. I
It
hope
would
it's
be.
not the case because obviously I would love to see the Chicago Cubs in the
Yeah.
World Series, but that'd be a pretty cool World Series. As much
Yeah.
as they're probably two of the most hated teams in the league, it'd be a sick World Series.
Ben, Thursday night, Cubs and Rangers. I cannot wait. They did it. It's time. The MLB is high on the Cubs. I love it. They know, well, they also know the fans will always tune in. But this year they're getting the premiere like banner night with the World Series winner that'll be on national TV. And then of course next year they get, the kickoff series or whatever
Yeah,
you want to call it, the international series, which is cool. Grow the game. But I think they should do it midway through the year, not before a week before all the other games start. But whatever. I can't complain.
I want just put it on record. Seiya Suzuki to hit a home run in the home opener in Texas. Book it.
All right. In the opener in Texas, say it to hit a home run to boost your odds on your MVP pick before since you already took it.
Exactly.
Then the odds will change by about 1,000 then and there.
No way. No way.
Guys, we're gonna have all kinds of coverage of the Cubs this season every Monday, as always. And going forward throughout the season, it'll become more constant on Mondays. We hope you listen with us all season long. We'll have some live streams a bit more informally this year through our YouTube. Be on the lookout for that, but we'll mostly just be self-posting, self-promoting through our YouTube, our Twitter, stuff like that, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So stick it right there. We appreciate the fandom we've grown.
Course. And yeah, just want to say thank you to you for the support, but just stick right with us. It's going to be a fun season. And yeah, last one before we're talking about a 3-game set with the Rangers
Finally,
come Monday.
finally.
We've made it,
Talked in
man.
circles about the hypotheticals about how this team is ready, how they're not. Be prepared for every week. The lowest lows, the highest highs. In season 120 is almost back, where we literally throw on that set on a Sunday night, following what was terrible Sundays every single time for the Cubs last season. We'd always be mad. We'd always have like something else on in the background, chatting about something else for us to take our mind off it. Let's hope this year is just so fun that we never have to worry about that again. I'm sure we will. Thanks for listening to 120.